This morning by lighting of our unity candle. So we light this candle each week to remind us that the flame of this candle is the light of the divine that is within each and every one of us. That spark of God that is there, shining brightly for the world to see. So we're glad that we are together and that we're bringing our light together. Will you join me now in an opening prayer? Spirit, we pause and turn within, recognizing that this is the day that you have created for us. Recognizing, God, that you are everywhere. And so we're grateful. Grateful for this time, grateful for our lives, and grateful for the technology that brings us together from all places. As we gather this morning, we turn within, recognizing the place where we are, that spark of the divine, where we are unencumbered by the world of effects. And so we open our hearts and our minds to be guided, to be taught, to be loved today. I bless this service. I bless all that it's about as we connect with one another on a very deep and heartfelt level. We're grateful. And with that heart of gratitude, I release my word and we seal it by saying together, and so it is. Welcome to the Louisville Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Rick McCullum, and I'm glad you're with us today. It's a very special day for us. We have a guest speaker, and so I will let you know up front now that Reverend Dr. Kenn Gordon is our speaker today. Thank you, Dr. Kenn, for being here with us. He has a long bio, and I'm not going to read a bunch to you. I'll tell you what's coming from my heart about Dr. Kenn, and that is what a person of high vibration, high spiritual principle, and integrity he is. I have worked with him throughout my practitioner training, my ministerial training, and as a minister. And he has had a lead in our organization for a number of years. When there were two Science of Mind organizations, he was the president of Religious Science International for 5 years, and I think he may talk a little bit about that. But then he led the organization through our integration process when the two Science of Mind organizations came together to walk our talk that we are all one. And so I got to see firsthand, up close, how this gentleman really lives his life being the compassionate conduit of spirit. And so I know that you're in for a real blessing today as he shares with us. At Louisville Center for Spiritual Living, we're an inclusive organization, and we honor all paths to God. So I want you to know that wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you're welcome here with us, and we're glad that you're here today. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and have our opening song.
When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, to finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips, but now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with the reverend air, 'cause everything is holy now. Testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverend air, 'cause everything is holy now.
And now it's time for our spiritual reading. And our practitioner of the day, Pat Ferguson, will offer our reading. Pat?
Well, our reading today comes from Science of Mind magazine. Before I begin, I want to offer those of you who might be moving around a bit, I want to offer you a chance to turn off your screen if you're going to move around, just so that it's not a distracting feature. But the sacred reading is coming from January 15th daily guides. And there are two opening quotes. The first one from The Enlightened Heart on page 47. If your mind isn't clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best season of your life. And the second is Science of Mind, page 317. The spiritual man is continuously remodeling and remaking the material or physical man. I believe we are as spiritual now as we are ever going to be, and that we have always been so. If we believe we are made out of an idea in the perfect mind of God, how could it be otherwise? If we believe we exist in a perfect unity of life, could it be possible for God to create something less than itself? It would not make any sense that there could be God and something else. What is more likely is that often we just do not know the depth of our spirituality. When we do not know we share the creativity of the mind of God, we often misfire in the things we manifest because we do not know about the power at our very fingertips. Every day is the right day to awaken to our spiritual origins and to learn how to think correctly, to put into motion ideas that affirm life and bring good to all. Who are we to wish others ill and thereby bring the weight of the law upon us? When we awaken each day, let us be determined to see ourselves as powerful beings with the scope of infinity available to us. Let us accept the goodness of the day for ourselves and for our neighbors, far and near, and really use our spirituality lovingly. The affirmation is, I know my inner power and I use it wisely and lovingly. I know my inner power and I use it wisely and lovingly. Now I want to I am going to segue into our wonderful guest speaker, but I wanted to say tell you one little story. We all know pretty much, we've seen him around a long time, and we know he's our spiritual information, our spiritual leader, and we get the best information from him, easy to understand. He's been everywhere and talked to us many times, but I got the chance to meet him in Portsmouth, Ohio in April of 2018. And I'm going to turn my computer just a little bit so you can see that. There's a big sign back there. And in 2018, we had a regional convention, and 8 of us from LCSL got to go. That sign says, "Hi, Vicki, wish you were here." And I carried that sign for 3 days at that retreat. That's Vicki Jeter over there in the corner. She's our lead practitioner, and she did not get to go. But Tammy and, let's see, me, Tammy, Bev, Jeanette Womack, Dana, Reverend Carolyn, and Ed and Pam Jewell got to go. And I wanted Vicki to know that she was truly with us in spirit. So I made that sign, took it, and I carried it faithfully. And I would just stop random people at this retreat and say, would you hold this sign so I can send it to our lead practitioner, because she didn't get to come. And then I would send them to Vicki so that she would see that we did have her in our back pocket. And I came to dinner one night with that sign, and right in front of me was Reverend Kenn. And unbelievably, he wasn't surrounded by a million people. And this little angel on my shoulder said, do it now, do it now, do it now, because this might be your only time. And so I handed him the sign and I said, would you let me take your picture with this sign? And he looked at it, and he looked up at me and he said, you got a video on that phone? And I said, yes. He said, well, let's make her a video. So Vernon, roll that video.
Vicki, thank you so much for being a practitioner, for the work that you do. And it must be spectacular. You must be good at what you do if you're a practitioner emeritus. But I got to tell you, I love the work you do. You are the wind beneath our wings. This organization would not be the organization it is if it weren't for the practitioners that take part in it. So God bless you. Thank you, and please keep doing the great work.
So all of that was to say, not only is he an inspirational spiritual leader, but he's just a damn nice guy. Welcome, Reverend.
Thank you. Oh, you guys are so sweet. I remember that conference and I remember that time, as a matter of fact. It's nice to have it come back. When you messengered me and asked me to speak and said you were Pat Ferguson from Louisville, I couldn't place it. And it took me the longest time to figure it out. You said I was the one with the sign at the conference. I couldn't even remember it was Portsmouth, Ohio. I just knew I'd been in Ohio at that particular time. So everything fit together and that was perfect. It came back like a flood. That was a great conference. That was a lot of fun. I'm so happy to be here with you. Everything is holy now. What a great song to open this all up with. That pretty much has been my mantra for this entire year since March. Just to bring you up to speed, I'm no longer the spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living. I retired, although that raises some smiles, I guess. I retired back in March 1st of last year. And you might remember March 1st last year, everything seemed pretty normal. We went to the conference, my wife and I went to the conference in Denver. And at that particular time, Dr. Edward Vihoon became the spiritual leader of CSL. And I timed out and I just stepped away. And you know, I've always been a person who had a vision for my life. I've always been a person who had, who always put something in front of me that I can put there, that I head towards in my life. And the circumstance of my coming to a retirement and coming to a place where I was going to end that, and as Reverend Rick mentioned, I've been in leadership for 21 years between Religious Science International and Centers for Spiritual Living. And so it's been a long time since I did not have that particular part of my life that was in place. So coming into March 1st, when I knew that I was going to retire and that I was stepping away, I kind of had a certain amount of uncertainty that was laid up around it. And like most of us, I know how to handle uncertainty. I know how to balance it or juggle it to a certain degree. I'm accustomed to knowing pretty much how life is going to work and then being able to fit myself into it to move smoothly forward in it. So, you know, I'd come home from, actually I'd been in Kenya, I'd been in Nairobi just prior to that, to a conference, a CSL conference where we graduated practitioners in Nairobi in Africa. And so before I went to Denver, we were in Nairobi with a group of people at the conference. And that was when the first signs of this thing called a pandemic started happening and started occurring. As a matter of fact, there was one of my staff ministers was there with her husband, and they were flying through Shanghai. And at that particular time, they weren't allowing the planes from China to land in Canada because of the pandemic, because of the COVID-19. So she had to rebook her plane. So that was really the first time that I heard of this thing called a pandemic. And that would have been, I don't know, second week in February kind of idea. And so we popped on our plane and we flew home, and we spent a couple of days, and then we packed up and we went to Denver for my retirement. And my life was filled with a certain certainty in every area that I can think of. You know, we often teach in this teaching the four square of life. How many people know what the four square is? Well, the four square is health, wealth, creative expression, and loving relationships. And those are the four different quadrants of our life. And the way I was taught when I was becoming a practitioner is that everything that happens in life can fit into one of those four quadrants. So it's called the four square: health, wealth, creative expression, loving relationships. And just as an aside, I've always created and taught in my center when I teach science of mind classes that there's actually a fifth. And I have people imagine it to look like a large 4-petal daisy. So that what you have, if you can envision a daisy which has 4 beautiful white petals on it, and in the center there is that yellow, that beautiful bright yellow spot that shows up on a daisy. And what I like to tell them is that is spirit, and that all of the 4 quadrants come off of that particular area. So my aside passed, with health, wealth, creative expression, loving relationships, when I was moving into this, I had a pretty secure idea and a certain amount of certainty around at least 3 of them. And for the first time in some 21 years in CSL and maybe 30 years in ministry, I was finding myself with the one being in question. You know, my health was good. I was certain about that. I was feeling well, feeling energetic and vital, no issues. My wealth was good. I'd set myself up so that I could afford to retire. So I wasn't really scrambling to make money anymore, and things were comfortable that way. My loving relationship, I've been in the relationship, married to my wife for 48 years. So that was good. And I had a relationship with thousands of people. When I went to conferences, when I made connections with people like you, with my congregation in Kelowna. So I had all this interconnectedness with all of these people that I was accustomed to and that I was certain of, that I was really comfortable with. The one area that I was uncertain about was creative expression, or the expression of what I do for a living and what I do for life. And I figured that one out, you know, knowing that I was going to step down, that it was going to be different. I'd already thought it through and figured out what I was going to do about this. And so I speak for myself, and I'm sure that all of you can fit in as we move into this conversation, that you can fit yourself into the scenarios. But in essence, I'd set myself up so that I thought that I knew how to handle the uncertainty around my creative expression or around what I was doing. You know, I'd already booked 8 different keynote addresses that went on for the rest of the year, which covered 8 of the months. And then if you figure a couple weeks holidays here and a couple weeks travel there, I'd pretty much set myself up so that I thought that what I could do is I could travel at least once a month. Pardon me, I'm not used to speaking. At least once a month that I could be out of town and traveling. And considering that for the last, 15, 16 years, I've traveled anywhere between 100 and 200 days of the year, I thought that would fit in pretty good. Plus, it would give me that expression that I'm doing right now, for example, of being able to be out and speaking and making connection and rubbing shoulders with people and falling in love again with new people everywhere I went. So health, wealth, and loving relationships were a certainty for me, and creative expression was the only one which was in doubt, and I was pretty confident that I had it worked out. So we came home from the conference on the end of February, and March 1st was my first day of retirement. Well, I got to tell you, March 1st was a good day. By March 8th, Canada had shut down. I'm not sure when the US shut down, but by March 8th, the pandemic had come to such a place and such a degree that literally the country shut down. The borders were closed. There was no chance of me traveling or anything else. And I suddenly found myself in a situation where there was a certain amount of uncertainty around that creative expression, and it began to flow into the other areas of my life. I mean, let's think about it. First off, health. Well, it's a pandemic, for heaven's sakes. Of course, everybody's concerned about their health all of a sudden. Of course, it's something that's on your radar, no matter how spiritual or how you know that everything is holy or how you know that your consciousness affects what it is. there is still that societal understanding and appreciation of what's going on in the world around you as you begin to lock down countries and see the rates go up and just experience that. So all of a sudden, at that particular point, health became uncertain. So there I was with my creative expression in uncertainty. Health suddenly was uncertain. Then what happened was the stock market tanked. People began to not be able to go to work because of the shutdowns that went on. And the economy suddenly became uncertain. So you have an uncertainty in health, you have an uncertainty in wealth. And it was a little shocking and a little surprising. Then with the shutdown, I no longer was in contact with my congregation anymore. All of a sudden, I had to second think whether my grandchildren could come over or what was going on. Pardon me. So the loving relationship suddenly became uncertain as well. So from moving from a life, which we all had, where we had established and idealed what was going to happen in the world around us as far as our lives went with regard to a certainty, we suddenly found every quadrant of our life was moving into an area of uncertainty. All of a sudden, what I discovered was that what I used to be certain of was no longer certain. Now, I'll tell you, when I always said the world would fall apart when I retired, so I shouldn't be surprised, but nevertheless, that's the way it unfolded. I'm on a board, a leadership board for Association for Global New Thought, or AG&T. And we had a Zoom meeting in the spring last year. And I can remember all the ministers, fairly influential ministers that were there, and we were talking. And I was saying that I was actually feeling a little guilty because I'd been thinking how I'd like to take a break and not do so much travel and just kind of lay back a little bit. And, look what I manifested. And the other ministers on that board said, no, basically that's what we thought too. Pardon me. I don't know what's going on. And when I think about it, I think that all of us, and I'm not just talking about the AG&T board, I think humanity itself was actually beginning to feel a little stressed and running fairly quickly and requiring or requesting and often speaking out how we'd just like to slow down a little bit. Well, as they say, from your lips to God's ears, all of a sudden the brakes were on and we did slow down. And I'm not sure how other people handled it, but for me, it began almost like thinking it was going to be a temporary thing. I remember that when it all took place and the shutdown came, that I was thinking, you know what? This is going to be over in a couple of months. I'm going to be able to get on a plane and go. And I still kept some of my keynotes alive saying, oh no, I'll be there. I'll be in Seattle. I'll be in Florida. I'm intending on showing up. I'm intending on doing this. Slowly, one after another began to have to close down. One after another shut down so that there was no choice that we were going to do this or not do it or where we were going to go. Normally at this time of year, Deb and I are in Mexico, which I see somebody here is from Mexico, bless you. And we found ourselves in that situation where all of a sudden we put our lives on hold. And that lasted for a couple of months. And then in the spring, I woke up one morning and I realized that I was making myself a victim of what was going on in the world around me. That my waiting to live my life until this passed was actually negatively affecting the quality of my life and the quality of my experience. So there wasn't very much I could do about the limitations or the restrictions that appeared to be on my health, wealth, creative expression, and loving relationship. But there was a whole pile I could do in that center spot, in that yellow piece, that spiritual part of who I am. And I awakened to the fact that I could change my mind about what was happening and begin to establish something that would be constructive and move me forward in what I was doing and how I was doing it. Everybody has different ways that they can think about doing that, or different ways, I'm sure, that they do dream or think about doing that. And each one is individual to them, and each one is something that they've worked out. But the one thing I knew was I had to do something different. My entire life, I've been a person who would have something I looked forward to put as a keynote or put as a light in front of me. You know, when Hannibal took his armies across the Alps, and everybody thought what a miracle it was that he could do that. What an incredible thing that he could bring those, his entire troops and move them such a distance so quickly. One of the things he did in order to be able to make that happen was he would send people ahead of him and ahead of the army, and they would build huge bonfires so that the troops, as they moved forward and moved into the mountains, could always see a fire or a light in front of them, so that what they could do is head towards the light. And it bolstered their morale and bolstered how they felt. So there was something they could do. And for most of my life, what I've done is I put something in front of me, whether it's I'm going to speak in Louisville on Sunday, or whether it's I'm going to fly to Mexico, or whether, you name it, I had something in front of me that I was headed towards. And in that circumstance and that need, that requirement within me, I needed to find a new way to be able to fill it in. I needed to find a new way to be able to set it up so that it could work, and that I could fearlessly look ahead and move forward with a certain amount of certainty as to where I was going to go, what I was going to do, and how I was going to do it. And after more or less 30 years of having it set up in one way, I suddenly found myself in a circumstance, in a situation where I had to get really comfortable with where I was and live in the, imagine this, the present moment. To be able to set myself up so that I could look forward to something in a different fashion than something I've done before. So I began to do certain things, things I'd never done before. I began to take new plans and new things, putting them into order. I brought out my paints again and began painting so that I had this structural picture of something that I wanted to accomplish in front of me. I began to put the paint back onto the paper again, and it gave me a sense of creativity. It provided me with a sense of hope. It provided me with an opportunity to move forward into it. It provided me with a sense of completion and accomplishment, or at least something down the road that looks like it. Am I making sense? Just nod your head if I am. The other thing that I began to do was I began to cook for the first time in my life. Deborah's still the senior minister here in Kelowna, and I'm not. So she's in classes and doing all these things all the time. And for the first time in the 48 years we've been together, I actually tried my hand at cooking. And I discovered that really filled in a lot of different aspects and areas of my life that I was looking for. First off, it was healthy, because I cook healthy. The second thing is that it too was creative. It too was constructive. It too provided me with a new outlet and something new to learn, because if you're not learning, then you're pretty much becoming redundant. So I began to learn how to do that. One of the things I learned was what an incredible responsibility it is that she'd been carrying for the last 48 years, and the kids are gone, so that wasn't even part of it. But do you know what I'm doing now? One of the first things I think of when I wake up in the morning is, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? And I do it because I realize I have to bring something out of the freezer or go to the store and get something in order to make it. I never noticed that before. It never occurred to me that figuring out what you're going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner was like a full-time job. I just took it for granted. I also took for granted how you mix all the flavors together. So when I was eating other people's food, quite often I wouldn't taste different flavors because I wasn't conscious of it. All of a sudden, since I did that, what I'm discovering is I can pick out the different seasonings that are in the dish, which I never could before, because I wasn't even aware that there was seasoning in the dish because I was ignorant of it. So that awakening and that new challenge gave me something to look forward to. It gave me something that I enjoyed doing. It provided creativity, and it provides connection to a certain degree. So all of a sudden, I had another area of my life that began to bring in and come together and provided a modicum of certainty. I grew a garden for the first time. Last spring, we plant in May here. So about May was when I had my aha that I was victimizing myself with this pandemic. And so I began to, I was a farmer for many years, and I promised myself I would never do such a thing again. So what I began to do, though, was grow my own vegetables and herbs. And initially, it was fun just to see it sprout and see it begin to move forward. And I'd grown flowers for years, so that wasn't a big thing. But the gardens itself, all of a sudden, I began looking forward to being able to pick a tomato. You know, oh, rats, it's still green, or when's that going to happen? Or my cilantro or my basil. I got to tell you a funny story is I planted a pile of Swiss chard, and I nurtured it and I looked after it, and it just didn't look like Swiss chard no matter what was happening. And one of my teachers, Carlton Whitehead, used to say, if you plant corn, you get corn. If you plant a potato, you get a potato. If you plant a negative thought, you get a negative experience. That teaching, you know the garden analogy, I'm sure. So here I had this Swiss chard plant that was growing, and I babied it all year long, and it just wasn't doing anything until somebody came over and told me that it wasn't Swiss chard, it was basil. And so that's an aside, but I'd actually grown a basil plant and thought it was Swiss chard. And even when Deb pointed out that it was basil, not Swiss chard, I argued with her because I had the package that said Swiss chard on it. That's proving the adage that what you plant becomes your reality. Obviously not in this case. So I grew a garden, and one of the beautiful side effects of it was, once again, it was the flavors. To have the healthy vegetables come out and to be able to taste them and eat them and look forward and anticipate being able to harvest them and to bring them into the house and do something with. It was a spectacular thing to do. And it once again helped me in the 4 squares bring some certainty back into my life. I bought a bike. I bought an electric bike. I live on top of a mountain, so and we've got trails like you wouldn't believe around here that have been built. Hundreds of miles of biking trails going along the side of all the creeks, and you can go pretty much anywhere without having to go in the streets. So one of the benefits of living in the town I was born in and starting and founding the church in this town, in this community, was that these are the streets and the areas that I grew up in when I was a kid, when I was a child. And back in the 50s, I had a bike, and I used to ride my bike all over the Okanagan and all over the Kelowna area. That was my mode and my means of transportation and of freedom. And suddenly with this bike, I discovered that nothing had changed. I discovered that there were still the areas I used to ride when I was a kid that were still there. They're a little bit more built up now. You know, when I was younger, there was 10,000 people in this community that's now 300,000. But some things had changed, but the sense and the energy stayed the same. I could ride to the park downtown on the lake and stop and get an ice cream cone. I began to realize and make friends with other people who rode. So I all of a sudden had other people that I was riding with, which brought in that relationship again, brought in that connectivity and that connection which I was seeking in my life. It gave me the opportunity to genuflect and to remember and ruminate on what it was like and what a great life I lead and what a great life I've always led. You know, I was telling everybody before you guys came on that Deb and I are teaching a ministerial class, and as a guest speaker, we had Jesse Jennings for the last couple of days teaching, and what a spectacular job he did, I was saying. But when we were listening to that beautiful opening song, Everything is Holy Now, I couldn't help but remember a prayer that he said that came from the Bible years and years ago, or that basically said, and I've got it definitely not correct, but I've written something down here, that you know, when the Jews were in slavery, they gave thanks to the Lord who came and freed them from the slavery. And the prayer goes, and that would have been enough. And then they got lost in the desert. And God found them and gave them direction and led them, and that would have been enough. And then they moved into their own country in their own area, and that would have been enough. And then they went through starvation, and God fed them, and that would have been enough. And the meaning behind it, of course, is that all of it's enough. We sit and we wait for something to happen and something to occur to fill us up and demand of the universe something else. And we forget what we've received in our life and what's present in our life. We forget the joy of a child, or the smile, which is a miracle, or the creation of life itself. We forget to give thanks for the technology that can bring us together like this. We forget to make connection with the spiritual truth of who we are and the love that we feel. We forget to give thanks for the food that we eat, for the ability to be able to grow a plant and pull something off of it and taste it, or to mix together flavors and create food, or to take colors and put it on paper and create what's known as art, or to ride our bike down a trail and remember when we were 7 years old, when you're 68. And remember the joy and the love and the light and the life that's all around us. And then we let little things disturb us. You know, we're talking about uncertainty, and we're talking about the pandemic bringing uncertainty into it, or at least I am. And then we had the election. That was uncertain. We've had all these things happening, and yet they're like the wind on the surface, like the wind in the prairies. And they don't affect the foundation that we live on, the beauty and the magnificence of life itself that's laid out there. We want to build a bonfire so that we can head in that direction and feel confident with it. And in my case, what I was doing was I was establishing the bonfire on my past experiences for the last 20 years instead of establishing it on everything that's in my life that's there that fills me with joy. Everything that's already present that I can take advantage of. I can't be physically with my congregation or with you at this point, but I have a loving relationship with my wife, with my partner. I still meet and connect with people even at a distance. It's just different. It's not absent. The light that gets to be put before me doesn't look like the way I expected it to look. the way I'd planned it to look. And because it didn't show up the way I wanted it to look, I labeled it uncertain. But the certainty is there as assuredly as the sun is going to rise in the morning and set at night. And the foundation that I stand on in my life, the earth and the beauty and the magnificence that's there, it's all for the goodness and it's all for good. The political situations that go on that often bring me to tears. There's something different, something not right, and yet something right again. The sense that I feel such incredible freedom and ability to be able to move forward since the 20th, and felt so bad on the 6th of January. There's a certainty that exists in life. And it doesn't exist in form, and it doesn't even exist in the experiences that we have. It exists in our ability to be able to put forward and embrace and remember the 99.99% of our life that is joyous. How I ever found myself in a situation where I forgot how grateful I am to be alive and to be me is beyond my imagination. How I could fall asleep for March, April, May, and become a victim to life as opposed to a celebrant of life, to be able to see it all around me. Each of us is blessed beyond words. And what has happened in the last year has only happened for the goodness and greatness. I know a lot of you are practitioners, therefore, and a lot of you are ministers, therefore practitioners as well. And we're trained in directing thought, and we're trained in, once we do our prayer, to release it and surrender, and then expect the manifestation of the experience and the expression to show up in our lives. We've been praying for a world that works for everyone for 20 years. So whatever makes us think that this last year, 2020, wasn't there to help design, direct, and create that is beyond my imagination. I'm very honored and very grateful to be here speaking to you. I miss you. Maybe not you as an individual, but you as an energy, you as part of my life. And even though we can't be physically in contact, we're just learning to do it in a different way. And that different way someday will be what we look as certainty. So let's move forward with courage and bravery and a positive attitude. Love you and bless you. Thank you so much.
Last year, so we appreciate that. We bless you for being here. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I think I'm up next as we move into quick prosperity. I want to say thank you for all you do in supporting us. January is always a slow month because people coming off the holidays, and this January is no different. We do have 2 Sundays left, but the last one is the very last day of the month. So just remember that Givelify, PayPal, or your checks are always appreciated. And if you would, in your chat is our prosperity affirmation. And I will say it once, and then Vernon will unmute us. No, he won't. Then we'll just say it together individually. Okay. In this new year, within a universe of infinite potential, I accept my ever expanding good. Yes. Say it with me. In this new year, within a universe of infinite potential, I accept my ever expanding good. Thank you. We appreciate you. And we have one announcement, and it is big, and maybe Reverend Rick will want to talk about this a little bit, but he's having his first workshop today at 12 noon. We'll leave this call, grab something to eat, and come back real quick. It's on a love offering basis, and you can send your love offering through whatever form of tithe software you use, be it Givelify or PayPal or check. Just mark it in the memo column and we'll take care of it. Reverend Rick?
So thank you. Grab something to eat and come back. We will be starting at noon. It'll be about an hour to hour and 15-minute workshop, and you'll get to discover what your word is to carry you and guide you and ground you for 2021. So I look forward to having you with us if that works for you. Thank you. And now it is time for our closing prayer. So Dr. Kenn, if you would unmute yourself and give us our closing prayer.
Thank you. I'd be honored. So let's just breathe into this moment. And I would ask that before we begin this treatment that you allow yourself to become conscious and aware of where you are, who you're with, and what you're doing. Allow yourself to move into the present moment, where you can understand and appreciate that the past is a wall and the future is a wall, and that everything of any value, the truth of who you are, exists right here in the present moment. That is where all the power of the universe resides. And it's in this space and in this place that I speak my word, recognizing and knowing that there is God and absolutely nothing else. I simply surrender myself to this truth and allow it to flow through me and be part of the encapsulation of that which is known as who I am. I speak my word knowing that the Center for Spiritual Living, Louisville, is a divine idea in the mind of God, and that every person that is present here today and every person that is open to this consciousness that is a part of the energy of this center is divine in their outpicturing. And I know that today has transformed and will continue to transform each individual and therefore the world itself. I recognize and realize that goodness comes from this community as it comes together on Sunday morning. And that goodness emanates out from it throughout the county, throughout the state, throughout the country, throughout the world, in such a way that it emboldens, strengthens, nourishes, and nurtures an ideal of a world that works in perfection. Accepting and expecting this to be the truth, I give an unconditional gratitude that it is already done and is already so. And I surrender this treatment back into that universal mind, which is your mind, my mind, and all mind. And I demand that it be my truth. And I live from it with anticipation and expectation. I let go and I let the divine unfold. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you. And now our closing song, Do All You Can.
eyes. And these are the words he said. He said, do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can. Holy Mother from India, helping the sick and the poor. Somebody asked, why do you do these things? She said, this is what I came here for. She said, do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can. This is a gift they gave to us to share wherever we go. Be the change you wish to see in this world. Now I understand what they wanted us to know. You can do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can. One little boy in Africa, do all you can. Holy Mother from India, do all you can. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Do all you can. Do all you can. Do all you can.
Thank you all for being here. Bless you. Go forth the spirit in expression that each of you were created to be. Blessings to you.